Are you ready to unlock your full potential and maximize your productivity? Look no further than Productivity Smarts, the ultimate audio podcast hosted by renowned productivity expert Gerald J. Leonard. In every episode, Gerald shares captivating stories, invaluable tips, and cutting-edge strategies that will transform the way you approach productivity. Whether you're looking to reduce stress, overcome overwhelm, or simply get more done in less time, Productivity Smarts has got you covered. But that's not all. You'll also gain inspiration from real-life success stories of individuals who have achieved greatness through productivity. Plus, you'll learn the latest tools, techniques, and habits that will help you achieve a new level of happiness and fulfillment in your personal and professional life. So why wait? Join us every week as we delve into the exciting world of productivity and help you unleash your full potential. Get ready to take your productivity to the next level with Productivity Smarts. As a productivity expert and host of the Productivity Smarts podcast, Gerald J. Leonard has been a proud supporter of Kiva since 2011. Kiva is a non-profit organization that helps entrepreneurs in third world countries access the capital they need to start or grow their businesses. By making a small loan through Kiva, you can help these entrepreneurs achieve their dreams, support their families, and contribute to their local economies. And with a repayment rate of over 96%, your loan can be relent to another entrepreneur once it's repaid, creating a ripple effect of positive change. So if you're looking for a meaningful way to make a difference in the world, consider making a loan through Kiva. With loans as small as $25, anyone can be a microlender and help change lives. Visit kiva.org to learn more and start lending today.
Today, I have the honor to be speaking to Robert M. Patterson, a pioneering entrepreneur and visionary behind iconic satellite broadcasts that have shaped history. And I mean literally have shaped history. In his new book, Iconic Moments in Broadcast History, Live via Satellite, Robert shares profound insights from his career, including legendary broadcasts such as the Frost-Nixon interview and the Olympics, and that were delivered to global audiences. Robert, how are you?
Doing very well. Thank you for inviting me.
Excellent, excellent. Well, before we get into it, and I'm excited to get into it, I always have a couple of questions for my guests because as a musician, I'm curious to what's your favorite style of music?
Well, basically, it would go back to the 1960s,
Okay.
and some of those songs that I enjoyed during that time was The Eve of Destruction by Barry McGuire, also Piece of My Heart from Janis Joplin, and Aquarius, Let the Sun Shine In by
Yeah.
the Fifth Dimension.
Excellent, excellent, excellent. Now, do you have a favorite artist?
I would say Janis Joplin because I got the opportunity actually to see her in a concert.
Yeah, yeah. You got a chance to see a lot of people. As we're going to talk. And so one of the reasons, I'll just have to say this for anybody who's listening, one of the reasons I'm excited is that, one, I would say you got to get the book Iconic Moments in Broadcast History, not only because it's super well written, but you will watch history unfold before your eyes, and you'll say to yourselves as you're reading the book, I remember where I was when that happened.
Mm.
Like things like Live Aid or boxing matches or presidential debates or the Frost-Nixon interview or the Olympics. You have been a part of all of these things. And I know you didn't start off that way, with your life going down that road. So what was it about you or about life circumstances that put you on this journey?
Yes, I began my career at Hughes Sports Network in 1969, managing radio and television transmission services for Major League Baseball, NBA basketball, the NHL hockey across
Wow.
the United States. My parent company, Hughes Aircraft, built the satellites that transmitted the historic images of the Apollo 11 moon mission that went to more than 600 million people around the world. Those early experiences gave me a front row seat to the evolution of global broadcasting and became the foundation for my 5-decade career helping pioneer advance in satellite communications.
Wow. Wow. I mean, just that's a mouthful. Again, this is the life that you've lived. But for someone who, as I read through the book, And I remember I just went like, "I remember that event. I remember that event." And the stories that you tell of things that you guys had to deal with to actually pull those things off, because even though to the viewer standpoint, it's like, "Oh, well, the TV glitched a little bit. That's no big deal." It was from your standpoint, it was like I remember the one story, I think it was in Memphis, where you had this huge broadcast and the wind or storm blew out an antenna, and, there's a service guy kinda hanging in an awkward position. The police are mad with him, but he had to stay there to do his job to make sure the broadcast goes on. Can you talk a little bit about that one? Because that really just caught my attention as well.
The service that you were talking about took place where we had to deliver a TVRO signal
Yes.
into an auditorium to some 2,000 people, and our technician actually found a parking space that had the line of sight. Unfortunately, it was in a restricted zone where parking wasn't allowed, and then a policeman came, and he had a very, very bad attitude, he wasn't very friendly, and he told the TVRO engineer to get out of there, and the engineer tried to explain that there's a show going on live,
Right,
and the police just would not accept any explanation, and he called in a tow truck, and the tow truck came, and the tow truck driver actually hooked it up to the trailer that had the antenna that was looking at the satellite, and he started hoisting it up. Well, our engineer, being innovative, he jumped onto the truck and actually was lowering the antenna as it was being up, so he kept the line of sight of the satellite and keep the
right,
program on the air.
right.
The police was just absolutely stunned. He said, "What are you doing?" And the technician said, "My job, sir." And then the tow truck driver and the policeman finally said, "Well, we gotta do something." So he spoke to our engineer, and they allowed him to stay where he was, and as a result, he kept the show on the air, and then and while the patrol truck was still had the antenna hoist on his unit. So it was an amazing story, and it takes technicians and ingenuity to figure out to keep the show on the air.
Exactly, exactly. You also talk about mentoring, and you mentioned that I think it was like someone who offered you a job, and
Mhm.
he came in and just kept teaching you just tons of information, and you asked him like, "Hey, why are you doing this? Like, why are you telling me all the stuff that you know?" And tell me about that situation, and what did you learn from that, and how did it help your career?
Yeah, he was a person that happened to be working at Hughes Sports Network, and he
Okay.
hired me, and throughout the time, he kept on teaching me what was going on and explaining why it was done, not just how it was done, but the stories behind why it was done,
Right.
and I went up to him and asked him, I said, one day, I said, "Why are you teaching me all this information?" He said, "Bob, if I teach you everything I know, then I have to learn something new to stay ahead as your boss." And I thought, wow, that's quite an experience. And I put that in my life to teach other people because learning is not to keep quiet, it's to share it with other people. And it's an amazing learning experience that he taught me everything I knew in the industry.
Exactly, exactly. Because when you're learning something and then you're sharing it, one, you learn it better, right? But it also you get inspired because you see what you've learned, how it's impacting other people, that you wanna continually keep growing yourself. Because one of the challenges as you get older is for some people, we stop learning or we stop growing. And
Right.
and and it's either we're growing or we're going the other way, and we don't really wanna go the other way. And so the best way to go is to keep growing.
Yeah. And it's very true. In today's society, sometimes you want to keep the information to yourself because of
Yeah,
security purposes, but that's not the way it should be done. You should
right.
share that information with others.
Yes. In fact, I find that the more I share in detail a lot of things that I'm doing, the more secure I become and the more people see me as a thought leader, an expert, and someone who's, generous or gracious, who's sharing all this information, but it also makes me more in demand. And so instead of it going backwards, saying, we only have so much pie, the pie actually gets bigger. Now, let me ask you this. In the book, you talk about a situation with Don King and a fight of the decade. Now, reflecting on Don King's fight of the decade, there were some things that happened there. How did you stay true to your beliefs, and how did that impact your own effectiveness and productivity in dealing with high stakes situations?
Yeah, that was quite a story. It was during the time where it was called the fight of the decade, which was the Holmes-Cooney fight, which Don
Right.
King was producing, and I was invited up to his conference room to talk about it. And during that time in the satellite industry, there was pirates who were able to steal the signal, and all they needed was a TVRO downlink to receive the signal. There was no encryption at that time, basically, it was just a new technology. And Don King wanted to make sure nobody received the signal free. So as a result, he wanted it to be scrambled or encrypted. And at that time, I felt it was a little too risky, and I refused to do that because I was afraid the fight would go down. And as a result, I actually stood my ground, and to the point in the meeting, I was asked to leave. So I just lost probably the biggest payday of my life for the company, but I stood the ground because I felt the technology was a little bit immature and a little premature before it could be used. But as it turns out, Don King's people came back to me and said, "Bob, we feel the same way, and you should really figure out a way how to do it." And I did. I came up with a satellite sting operation, which actually provided two signals on the satellite. And one was a phony signal that only had the slate, and then our technicians only received the actual communications or coordinations of the actual signal. And as a result, we were able to transmit the signal in the clear to everybody throughout the whole United States, through the theaters and the arenas, and everybody received it, and everybody who was trying to steal the signal had the wrong coordinates and were looking at a separate satellite that only had the slate of the actual program. So as a result, it became successful. But for me, I felt that I knew the industry, I understood it, and I didn't
Yes,
wanna risk that. And it was such a major event, you couldn't afford to lose the signal.
exactly, exactly. Now, you also had some advice given to you that you received related to Jackie Robinson's legacy,
Yeah.
and how did that influence you personally in your own productivity and decision making?
That was probably one of my best informations and advice that I ever got in life.
Okay.
It was when I graduated from my college, and I happened to sit down with Jackie Robinson at breakfast, and Jackie didn't wanna talk about baseball, he wanted to talk about life, and he looked
Mm,
at me and he said, "You know, life can be unfair. You can do everything right and it still not be good enough."
mm,
And boy, that was the best life experience I ever had because in my career, I had a lot of ups and downs. And as a result, I always remember what Jackie told me that life could be unfair. But what you do, the main thing is what you do after that. No matter what the diversity is, you got to stand up and move forward. You can't let that down.
exactly, exactly. Some buddies of mine, we were talking about just that very thing, that sometimes life can be challenging. You can be working really hard, and it seems like you're on a grind. One of them brought up the cartoon Madagascar with the penguins, and in that cartoon, the penguins are just looking at what's going on and saying, "Just smile and wave, boys, smile and wave." In other words, just kind of keep going.
Yes.
Keep persevering, keep going, just keep a happy attitude, and it'll
Yeah.
all work out, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
And that's sometimes what you gotta do. Well, listen, you talked and you've shared in your book about your extensive career in technology and broadcasting, and honestly, you were on the verge of just many things that we now, like 24-hour television, meeting to turn before there was CNN 24-hour television and things like that. For yourself, what productivity strategies did you find most effective that allowed you to remain in this very fast-paced, complicated environment and yet adapt quickly to all the industry changes.
Yeah, as was growing up in the industry, and at the time when I started, satellites was in its infancy. So
Right.
I was at the cutting edge when it first started. And then as we talked about my mentor who taught me what was involved and what it took and so forth, I had the privilege of having some very good experience of actually providing the transmissions and services. And with that experience, I was able to look forward and see ahead where the industry is going. And in those days, it was analog. And as a result, everything had to be transmitted on a very large antenna. And as a result, a lot of communications, a lot of technicians, a lot of involvement. And then in 1989, I actually saw the industry changing where we were going to go to HDTV. And I did the
Yes.
first transmission of high definition television. And that really changed everything because Congress finally took the step to actually make it into a digital world. So
Right.
what changed major was going from analog to digital. And when
Yeah.
we went digitally, then you can have internet. And as a result, it changed the whole world. And
Yes.
everybody today is doing a digital revolution as we know it today.
Exactly. Exactly. And AI is just taking that to a whole nother level, right? With everything that's going on. Now, you were a part of something that I remember growing up, and it was Live Aid. But the way I want to frame this question is what role did clear communication and collaboration? Because when I listened to this story about Live Aid, I read through that story, there was a lot of collaboration that had to go on because you had bands and groups and concerts all over the world on every continent, right? And it all had to be synchronized and delivered to someone's living room. So what was it like to be successful in this very complex operation that impacted people globally with the Live Aid and the musicians, but you had to do it in partnership with others. What was that like, and what role did that play for you, and what did you learn, and what did you gain from that?
Yeah, like any major event, whether it's the Olympics or championship fights or Live Aid or anything, it actually took months for
Yeah,
preparation. You had to work with different organizations in foreign countries. So as a result, you had to get familiar with what facilities they had, and you
right.
had to coordinate it all over the world. And it just isn't one transmission. You had to put it on multiple satellites and able to get it to different parts of the world. And as a result, it took absolutely coordinations amongst everybody. Now with Live Aid, it was really basically originated in England, and then it was also performed here in Philadelphia and Pennsylvania, and as a result, they coordinated. So part of the whole transmission was done over in Europe, and then the other part was here in the United States, and you had to keep on moving back and forth, and when they interviewed different live acts from different people and different locations around the world, you had to bring those signals into the control room and then retransmit it back to the whole network. So it took a lot of effort to put together.
Yes, yes. And, again, with reading through that part and just the amount of communication and synchronization and collaboration, and it's a very complex situation where if one signal goes down, then that's a whole part of the world that is no longer able to watch that or contribute or whatever. And, from the viewer standpoint, because I remember seeing that, it was flawless, right? But I'm sure on on the back end, it was anything but flawless because you're constantly having to, like, make sure everything is plugged in and everybody's wires are working and all communication channels are constantly up and working and having backups to the backup and things like that going on.
You're absolutely correct. And behind the scenes, chaos goes on because everybody's coordinating everything. And if the
Yes.
people at home ever knew how many thousands of people to put this thing together, I mean, it's just not sending one signal out. You had to coordinate with the production people, the engineers, the technicians, different parts of the world, be able to communicate when to receive the signal, when not to receive the signal. It is an amazing coordination. And if people had any idea how many people and hands it has to go through, they'll be amazed just watching any TV on television during those days.
Exactly, exactly. Now, as we get ready to land the plane here, and I have one last question before I ask you where people can get the book and learn more about you and follow you and so on. What practical advice can you give someone who's listening, both professionally or if they're creative, on maintaining focus and productivity during high pressure moments? Because I dare to say that every situation we just talked about was a high pressure moment. But you seem to have a personality that's very calm and control under that. How did you develop that? And how do you maintain that?
Well, basically, and a perfect example was during the 1984 Summer Olympics, when unfortunately the signal actually vanished from the airways. And as a result, what you have to do is stay calm. The very, very first thing you must do, take your emotions out of it. You can't think of the consequences. You have to think ahead. You have to remember what you need to do is to get the show back on the air. So the most important thing is keep cool, calm, and collected during that time. I know it's very difficult, but you got to do that and stay focused. And your main event is get that show back on the air. That's your main thing that you have to keep constantly reminded.
Yeah, I like that because we're living in a time where a lot of people have lost their jobs. The economy is up and down. Gas prices are up right now. AI is replacing jobs, or people have to retrain on something that they need to learn, and that can
Yeah.
create a lot of pressure on people on a very personal level to where they lose sleep at night or they're not eating well or they're worried. But I like what you said was you can't think about what the outcome of things not going well. You have to stay focused on we got to keep this show on the air.
Yes, exactly. And, with AI and everything, that is going to change things, but you got to remember that they need your personality. You need your
Yes.
people with engineering capability, ingenuity. People have the intelligence to make AI work for them. Don't let
Yes.
AI work for them. So as a
Right.
result, you need people knowledgeable to use that technology in the future.
Now, Robert, I'm going to call you Bob because I know that's one of the names that you like to go by. Where can people find your book? Where can people learn about you? Where can they look you up? And just again, I can't promote this book enough because it really is a. I know you titled it iconic moments, but I really have to say it really is an iconic book. There's so much education and so much experience that you have there. Where can people find out about you?
Well, thank you. As you mentioned, the book is Iconic Moments in Broadcast History, Live via Satellite. It's on Amazon. You can get it in ebook, you can do it on paperback, or you can get it on hardcover. And if you want to reach me as far as know more about my background, you can go to my website, which is rmp-satellites with an S.com. And then you'll learn my history and my accomplishments during my career.
Excellent, excellent. Well, Bob, this has been such an honor for me to have you on the show. Again, after reading your book and just going through the stories and taking me back to places and events that I remember and just understanding the background. I was super honored to have you on the show, and I know that the guests who are the listeners who are listening are going to get a lot from this episode, and if they go get your book, they're going to get even more. So thank you so much for being on the Productivity Smarts podcast.
Thank you very much, and thank you for inviting me, and it's been a sheer delight. I loved it. Thank you.
If you're enjoying the content and finding it valuable, we would appreciate it if you could take a moment and leave us a review. Your feedback is important to us and helps us reach a wider audience. If you leave us a 5-star review, it would mean the world to us. Not only does it help us improve the podcast, but it also helps us attract more sponsors and grow our community. Thank you again for your support and for listening to the Productivity Smarts podcast.
Thank you for tuning in to Productivity Smarts, where we help you achieve your goals and live your best life. We hope you've gained valuable insights and actionable strategies to boost your productivity and increase your happiness and fulfillment. Remember to apply what you've learned and keep striving towards your goals. And if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to our podcast for more inspiring episodes and expert advice from our host, Gerald J. Leonard. Until next time, keep pushing forward and unleashing your productivity smarts.